Hello Red Case listeners, welcome back to the channel that brings you real crime stories from around the world. Stories that disturb, bewilder, and haunt the corners of our collective memory. Today, we are taking you to Macau, the neon-drenched gambling mecca of Asia. But behind the bright lights and bustling casinos lies a dark tale, one of greed, betrayal, revenge, and human meat buns. Yes, you heard that right. This is the story of the Eight Immortals Restaurant murders, also known chillingly as the Pork Bun case, a tale so gruesome, so strange, that it sounds like urban legend, but it really happened, and it begins with a family, the Zheng family, and a man who wanted what they had. Let's go back to the beginning. Our story begins in Macau, in the 1985s, nestled on a small street in the Taipa village, surrounded by cobbled alleys and pastel-colored colonial buildings, was a modest but popular family-owned eatery, the Eight Immortals Restaurant. Named after the legendary figures in Chinese mythology, the restaurant was run by the Zheng family, hardworking, private, and known to serve up some of the tastiest traditional Cantonese dishes in the area. Patrons would flock there for dumplings, noodle soups, and especially the steamed pork buns, which gained quite a reputation. By all appearances, the Zheng family was doing well. They were respected in the neighborhood and seemed to be living comfortably, but behind the kitchen doors, a storm was brewing, one that no one, not even the closest customers, could see coming. Enter Huang Jiqing, a gambler, loan shark, and petty criminal with a volatile temper and a history of intimidation. Known by many in Macau's underground circles, Huang was often seen lurking around gambling dens and karaoke lounges. His demeanor could be charming at first, but his presence was menacing. He exuded the kind of danger that kept people quiet. Sometime in 1984, Huang struck up a relationship with the Zheng family. He wasn't there for friendship or a hot meal. He was there for money. It was believed that the Zheng family had borrowed a significant amount from him, about 180,000 patakas, a huge sum at the time, either to expand the restaurant or to settle a gambling debt incurred by one of the Zheng sons. But as months passed, Huang began to demand repayment, and he wasn't interested in waiting. One by one, things started to change at the Eight Immortals Restaurant. First, it closed without warning for several days in August 1985, then it reopened, but something felt off. Customers noted that the original owners, the entire Zheng family, were nowhere to be seen. In their place was a man claiming to be a new manager. That man, none other than Huang Jiqing. He told regular customers the family had gone back to mainland China and left the business to him. Odd, yes, but plausible. And then came the strange, grisly rumors. Some patrons claimed the pork buns tasted different. Richer, meatier. The whispers began, jokes at first, but soon they sounded more like questions. What happened to the Zhengs? It wasn't until weeks later that the alarm was truly raised. A concerned family member from the mainland who hadn't heard from the Zhengs filed a missing persons report. Police visited the restaurant, now under Huang's control, and questioned him. He claimed the family had returned to China and gifted him the business. He even presented a handwritten receipt supposedly proving the transfer. But the document looked suspicious. No legal proof, no signatures from banks or authorities. It raised more red flags than it answered. Still, without concrete evidence, the police had little to act on, but fate was about to intervene. In September 1986, a grisly discovery was made near the beach at Hak Sa, not far from the Taipa district. Inside a floating plastic bag, locals found severed human limbs, decomposing, dismembered, and hastily wrapped. A few days later, more body parts were found in different parts of the city. The remains were DNA tested and confirmed to belong to members of the Zheng family. Panic swept across Macau, and all eyes turned to one man, Huang Jiqing. When police raided the Eight Immortals Restaurant, they found evidence that chilled their blood. Traces of blood behind the kitchen tiles, a saw with suspicious material lodged between the teeth, old receipts and notes suggesting forged ownership of the restaurant, and most horrifyingly, bones in the drain pipes and under the floorboards. Police believed the entire Zheng family, 10 people including children, had been murdered inside the restaurant, their bodies dismembered, and their flesh potentially used in the restaurant's signature dishes. While there's no official evidence confirming cannibalism, the whispers turned into screams. The story gained international infamy as the Pork Bun case. Huang tried to flee Macau, but he was captured in Guangzhou and brought back for trial. The court proceedings were unlike anything the region had ever seen. Prosecutors laid out a premeditated mass murder, where greed was the motive, and cover-up the method. The most chilling part, Huang never confessed. Even when the evidence was overwhelming, he maintained that the Zhengs had fled and that someone else had framed him. But the jury wasn't convinced. In 1986, Huang Jiqing was found guilty of multiple murders and sentenced to death. He was executed by firing squad, and just like that, the nightmare seemed to end. Or did it? The arrest of Huang Jiqing in late 1986 marked the beginning of one of the most talked about criminal trials in the history of Macau. The courtroom was packed. Reporters flew in from Hong Kong, mainland China, and even international outlets, all eager to witness the unraveling of the pork bun killer. The prosecution laid out its horrifying narrative. Huang, motivated by greed and rage, had lured each member of the Zheng family to the restaurant one by one over the span of a few days. He allegedly killed them, dismembered their bodies, and disposed of them through the restaurant's drainage system and local bodies of water. Parts of the bodies were allegedly cooked. Some claimed to cover up the evidence. Others whispered it was for serving to customers. The court, however, focused on the forensic and circumstantial evidence. Though much of the physical remains had decomposed or been scattered, key pieces were found. A bone fragment discovered beneath a floorboard matched the Zheng's family DNA. A meat cleaver and saw, both stained with dried blood, were found hidden in the kitchen wall. A forged business transfer document, allegedly signed by the Zheng family, was proven fake by handwriting experts. Additionally, several former employees and regular patrons testified that they had stopped seeing the Zhengs weeks before the restaurant changed hands. More chilling was a former dishwasher's account. He claimed he had once been told don't ask questions you don't want the answer to, after spotting something suspicious in the freezer. Despite the mountain of damning evidence, Huang stuck to one story. He said the Zheng family had fled to the mainland to avoid financial problems and had sold him the restaurant willingly. He claimed he was being framed by corrupt police and rivals in the underground gambling world. The courtroom was tense as Huang took the stand. His demeanor was chilling. Calm. Collected. Smirking at times, when asked about the rumors of cannibalism, he simply replied, "People believe what they want to believe. I just ran a restaurant." That line, emotionless, mocking, would be quoted in headlines across Asia for weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. On the morning of December 4, 1986, the verdict was read: guilty, guilty of the premeditated murder of the Zheng family, guilty of fraudulent ownership, and guilty of destruction of evidence and abuse of corpses. He was sentenced to death by firing squad, to be carried out in mainland China. There were no tears. No pleas. Huang accepted the sentence with a smirk. To the very end, he refused to confess. The aftermath of the trial left Macau shaken. Never before had the city seen a case so gruesome, not just in method, but in implication. The idea that people might have unknowingly eaten human flesh, that a well-known family could disappear, murdered in their own place of business, that a man could take over a restaurant after killing its owners, it was unthinkable. Parents refused to let their children eat out for months. Business at surrounding restaurants plummeted, and the urban legends began to take root. While the courts had never officially confirmed that human remains had been served as food, the media ran wild with the idea. One anonymous source told a Hong Kong tabloid, the meat was fatty, too rich. People started throwing up when they heard the news. Locals whispered about nightmares, about strange smells from the alley behind the Eight Immortals, about people going mad after unknowingly consuming tainted food. Soon, people began referring to the case not by the Zheng family's name, but by its most terrifying possibility, the Pork Bun Murders. The Eight Immortals Restaurant never reopened. For years, the building stood abandoned, windows boarded up, doors chained, but rumors persisted that lights were sometimes seen at night inside, that people walking past the alley heard screams or the sound of chopping. The area became a site of ghost tours and curiosity seekers. Some said they saw a family of 10 sitting silently in the restaurant after dark. Others claimed they saw Huang leaning in the doorway, smirking, as if he was still waiting for one last customer. The Zheng family's murder had a deep and lasting impact on Macau. Food safety laws were tightened. Small business ownership transfers became subject to stricter regulation. The case became a teaching point in criminal psychology courses across Asia, and documentaries, films, and books were inspired by the events, though many dramatized or exaggerated them. To this day, the full truth of what happened inside that kitchen is part fact, part folklore. But one thing remains certain: 10 lives were brutally taken, and the city would never forget. So what can we learn from a case like this? Behind every cheerful storefront, every neighborly smile, there may lie secrets, sometimes monstrous ones, and no matter how much time passes, some crimes continue to live in the collective memory, forever unanswered, forever chilling. If you ever find yourself in Macau, and you walk past a crumbling old building where a restaurant once stood, remember the Zhengs. And remember what greed, when mixed with cruelty, can become. Thank you for watching. This has been the story of the Eight Immortals Restaurant Murders, the Pork Bun case. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories from the shadows. Stay safe, stay aware, and never take what's on your plate for granted.